Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast. This is the podcast and talk show where we have digital discussions from the worlds of pop culture, music, TV, film, everything really, depending on the guest. We talk about it all. As always, I'm your host, Peter Meliotis. On social media, you know me as PD Beats. My guest is a performer, and she is none other than Siobhan Dillon. Siobhan, welcome to Popternative.
Thank you. Hi.
So I could have said storyteller, but I said performer. But I find storytelling and performing kind of go hand in hand. When did you decide you want to be a performer / storyteller?
I love that you say that, because the penny only dropped for me about 5 years ago, because I've always been a performer, but it is very different, isn't it? And you totally hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I was always performing for love, I guess. We can go really deep with that on a psychological level, but we won't today. Since I was like 9 years old. And then in 2015, and this is not a violin moment, but I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And in that moment, everything changed. The way that I looked at the material that I was performing completely changed. I was able to connect to the text so much sort of easier, I guess. And so that was when it started, the storytelling really began. I mean, I've been a musical theatre performer / storyteller since I was 21. But really 2015 was when it
you're doing a lot of like musical theater, but what I find funny is, well, not even funny, but I find it interesting when I interview a lot of, actors about, how they got started, and they're on some big TV shows and big movies, but they all talk about how they started in the theater. Like that's where they kind of learned their craft, and I find that really interesting.
Yeah, it's a tricky place to start as well. You can't go back and take it again. But it's also, the pros and cons to everything, because I've done a little bit of TV work as well, and I find aspects of TV so much harder than theatre. But who knows, maybe it's because that's where I started.
For sure.
Yeah, it's certainly a good place to cut your teeth, that's for sure, yeah.
For sure. So, it's crazy times during quarantine right now, but what has Siobhan Dillon been kind of working on? Because I understand there's a lot of projects and a lot of songs that are around in the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Since 2015, I've been working on an album called One Voice, and a really good friend of mine, Steve Anderson, who's a phenomenal producer, he basically just called me up and said, I think now's the time we should record an album for you. And I was like, okay, sure. And as I said, since 2015, so it's been a while in the making. And I've been living in Los Angeles and New York for a little while too. And he's been in London the whole time. So whenever I was going back to London, we'd have these little sort of stolen moments to record a track here and there. And we've just recently released One Voice, the album of covers that really resonate with me, rather than just sort of the obvious show tunes. There are 2 show tunes in there, but for the most part, it's just songs that I can storytell through, using
You love that, and you love that I said storytelling. You keep going back to that.
But yeah, it's funny because originally someone actually said to me, what are you going to call the album? And I was going to call it The Storyteller. So it's very interesting that
you're just saying that.
No, I'm
What I really find interesting about your career is you have wore many hats. You've done a lot of stuff. You've done musical theater. You have done, acting in shows. You're on an episode or 2 of Grace and Frankie on Netflix. But like, I love people that do a lot of things and don't just limit themselves to one thing. How important is that for you?
Oh, well, it's become quite a big challenge for me, because I went to fashion college. So my background really is design, fashion design and product design. And then in my late 20s, I started interior designing, and I actually renovated and designed 3 restaurants in London, one of which was a Michelin star restaurant. So I did a bit of that, and then I went back into Miss Saigon, and then I had the cancer thing, and then I kind of did a bit of TV, and it's a little film, and it's sort of dotted around. Honestly, I really enjoy the fact that now I'm just focusing on One Voice, on just recording songs, I've also started teaching meditation too, and I play sound bowls, crystal healing sound bowls. So it's almost like I can't just do one thing.
Is there anything you don't do?
There's so many.
Well,
so
you definitely don't sleep, right?
I sleep really well.
Have you heard about, like melatonin, like all those, like the tea? Have you heard about these chocolate bars all of a sudden?
Yeah.
What is going on with that?
I don't know. I don't know, because you can get them in two different forms. One which is sort of scientifically derived and sort of chemical, and the other one which is natural. But it's not natural human. It's natural from an animal, isn't it?
But when you think of melatonin, you think of something to put you to sleep. But when you think of chocolate, you think of the opposite. You think of caffeine. So I'm just like,
I haven't got it quite right yet. Still working on that one.
But I'm seeing people posting about it. Have you ever seen something online where you're just like, this interests me? Like I have to Google this. Like
all the time. Well, I just trained in a sleep meditation, yogic sleep called Nidra. And the same thing, when I first heard about Yoga Nidra, I was like, I need to know more about this, because this can't be what it is. But it actually is phenomenal. They're using it to treat PTSD, like it drops you into a parasympathetic state, like sleep state, you get serious rest. That is what you should be using. If you're thinking about having a chocolate bar, just do Yoga Nidra. It's the future.
Absolutely. You have been involved with a lot of productions, musical theater, the adaptations of some of the biggest musicals on the planet. The one I'm going to kind of bring up right now is obviously Grease, because that's my favorite musical of all time. And I honestly think that the music in that's some of the best music of all time from that musical. Like, I love that musical so much.
Yeah. I did till I was in it.
No, but do you agree, though, that there's something, like, what is it about Grease that sets, like, I find, like, I'm not a big musical guy. I'm not. You know what I mean? But I love Grease.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. It's accessible. I don't know, but it's a bit risque. And it was, when we spoke to the director in 2006, 2007, he had all this information about how it was created on this true story of a group of kids in this school in Chicago. And there was a real Rizzo, and there was a real Sandy, and a real Patty, and all these characters were based on real people. And he said Rizzo was really vile. It's got some really dark undercurrent, I think, to that musical. And I think that kind of draws people in. Plus, you've got like the saccharine, sweet pop element too, which is going to draw the other crowd in. I just think it's got something for everyone, I think.
It's just catchy songs. I feel like at one point, I don't know. Actually, I feel like Hollywood is going to be changed forever now. And I can't wait to read the books and kind of see what's going to happen now with productions. Yeah. But I feel like every big production, how they say oh, you can't touch this. No, at one point, everything was getting remade, it seemed. Yeah. And I feel like they're kind of careful with Grease. They did the live, what was the live one where they put on TV? They did that rendition, but in terms of a movie, a remake movie, I don't know. That'd be kind of tough. That would be kind of tough to touch. And I feel like if you talk to people that like yourself that have been involved with the productions of that, I feel like you kind of agree with me a little bit.
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, it's like a cult. It's like Pulp Fiction or something. It's sort of you can't touch it. It just is magical. And it's
Rocky Horror Picture Show, there were talks to remake that, and that got shut down really quick.
Yeah.
Have you ever been approached to do an adaptation of that by any chance? Because I feel like that's a really popular musical, and I know a lot of production companies have done that one.
No, I haven't.
No.
No, now I feel like I'm missing out.
You remember that one though, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's a Halloween. I remember it was the talk of the town. They would at one of those theaters. Everyone would dress up, and you'd go watch it at the theater. You'd throw things at the. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's a spectacle. You know what's really funny? There's a term, the spectacle of excess. We talk about that in communication studies classes. I have a master's in communications. We talk about the term spectacle of excess, and the excess is the interaction, the interactive aspect of things.
Yeah.
And that's why professional wrestling, the wrestling, the WWE, is known as the spectacle of excess because of the interaction with the fans and the signs and everything. I find that's a very interesting term, spectacle of excess.
That is really interesting because then you think about Greece again, and that there's something very accessible and very like dress up as the part, and it's something that everyone can get a bit of. So there's like
Absolutely.
Like they're doing like the dress, like Sound of Music. You kind of dress up to go to whatever performance it is, and you can kind of like sing along. They do all those things where it's like, you participate.
Are you, I mean, obviously when you were younger, you probably had specific tastes in music that were kind of like your go-to, but are you like someone that's kind of like appreciative of like a lot of different genres of music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Like, I mean, I remember when someone first played an Interpol song and I was like, oh, this is incredible.
Oh, I love that band. That band's awesome.
Right? And but I still listen to classical music, and I still listen to musical theater, and like anyone that has a beautiful voice I can appreciate. Like there are some singers, for example, that have got the most incredible voices. I'm like, I can't sit and listen to them for long, but I can still appreciate how beautiful their voices are. You know what I mean? Same thing with like rock bands, like heavy metal bands. Like you can still
now we're talking, okay? Because like that that's what I really like, okay? But I was just talking to someone about this recently. You look at like a lot, because I'm into, I listen to everything, like trust me, you know what I mean? But I had my phase where I was really into like heavy metal and punk and all that. I still have that phase a little bit. But you look at a band like the Ramones, and like think about how many bands and how many, like think about how many artists wouldn't be around today if it wasn't for a band like the Ramones, if you think about it.
They're trendsetters, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, like you can go back. There's a lot of like trendsetters. Like I look at obviously like Michael Jackson and Madonna as the big trendsetters of the pop, because everyone, like everything you listen to in pop music right now, like they did that like 20 years before.
Yeah, it's true.
And the same thing with anything like Green Day and Fall Out Boy. No,
Bowie, Queen,
Bowie, and even like. If you go a little bit down in like the punk rock, I mean the grunge, there's Nirvana. Like how many bands would not be around without Nirvana? Yeah. And then also a little, not as much, but like the Ramones, and then the Misfits. I don't know if you ever know about them, but they were like a punk rock band, and they did a lot of that. Yeah, so it's just like I find that interesting. So what are some of the artists that like the type of music that you kind of play and like the sounds we'll hear, on Spotify of Siobhan Dillon? What's part of the recipe if you would kind of throw in a couple of artists? What are we getting?
Well, I don't know whether I can answer that, actually. Someone mentioned, oh, God.
Okay, well, what have people mentioned?
Yeah, there was, I want to say Sandy Denny. I think that's what someone compared my voice to, because the thing about the recordings is that we stripped it right back. So it's just about my voice. So it's more about the voice comparison, less about the production comparison, because Steve Anderson has produced incredible, like huge sort of movie score type, songs. And I think, so there are moments, obviously, as you've heard in the album, that are quite theatrical in that respect, but ultimately my vocal is front and center. And apparently the quality of my voice is similar to Sandy Denny. Yeah.
Interesting. No, that is interesting. Well,
yeah, I don't know.
So people can listen to the record now?
Yeah, it's available on all platforms to buy and to stream. So we go Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, iTunes.
Spotify is just like, it's crazy to see, because like I know some people artists have things to say about the royalty aspect of it, but I don't really like getting into that a little bit. But I find in terms of the discovery of music, it's amazing. Like I discovered so many bands through Spotify. Yeah,
agreed. Me too. Yeah, in fact, it was just the other day, my husband and I were listening in the car to one of their sort of playlist thing, like a shuffle thing, and there were so many people like, screenshot that one. We got home, we were like researching all these new people. It was awesome.
But you know what I'll do now, and I think TV, and like for example, Grace and Frankie is one of these that I kind of heard my parents talk about. This is like, you'll watch a show and you'll be like, that's a good song, and you take out your phone and you like Shazam it. Yeah. Like, I do that all the time, and I have like playlists called like Netflix tunes, where it's like all songs from Netflix shows, right?
Right.
And I think that's amazing. But so yeah, they could plug away. They can listen to the album on Spotify and anywhere.
Yeah.
And where can they follow you on social media?
My Instagram handle is This is going to be interesting. Siobhan Dillon official. See, the first hurdle is spelling the name right. So, we can put it on the screen, right? Siobhan
Absolutely.
Dillon official. And then on Twitter, it's Siobhan Dillon UK, because that's obviously where I'm from. What else? We've got Siobhan Dillon official on YouTube as well, and all the tracks are up on there. I think that's everything. I'm a bit old school. I'm not very good with the social media stuff. I'm having to get better, I've been told. But I'm posting loads more live videos up. I did one. In fact, people will probably know the song "She Used to Be Mine," which is from Waitress the Musical. It's a Sarah Bareilles song. I recorded that as a one-take challenge. That's also on my YouTube, Siobhan Dillon official as well.
Absolutely. I'm actually doing on Instagram Live on Saturday. I'm doing something called Popternative Fest, where people are kind of joining me live, and they're going to be performing songs.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I find that's kind of. Have you done any of those? Have you done any like live performances yet during the quarantine?
I've been asked to do a few, but nothing's really happened right. Nothing's happened as yet. But I'm totally open to it because I love that kind of.
But we could talk about that. That'd
All
be awesome. Siobhan, thank you so much for joining me on Popternative. I had a blast chatting with you.
Of course, me too. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, this has been Popternative. YouTube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. And until next time, this is Siobhan Dillon and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.